for you, what was your biggest learning lesson when it comes to maybe, let's say, partnerships, like after that situation?
Yeah, I think honestly, a really big one for me is there are different credentials that'll matter to different people. To be honest with you, I don't care too much about somebody's actual credentials of like, what, for instance, what college you went to or how much money you made previously or any of those kind of things. Like, obviously, depending on what the business is, those can matter somewhat. But to me, I'm like, as long as you're actually aligned with people who have the same morals and okay, let's always play out the worst case scenario. And this is something Ramon and I talk about all the time is it's like, okay, so everything can look good and feel good and sound good when life is amazing. But the reality is no matter who you are, you're going to have those cycles where it's not, where something happens and some things are worse than others. But like, how is that person going to react? And how is that person going to respond when like shit hits the fan? I don't know if I can curse on here. You might have to bleep me, but so I apologize. When beef hits the fan, I mean, you need to have people behind you that would also stay up for 4 days straight fixing it, would also refund people out of their own damn pockets if that's what it came down to. Like, those are the kind of people. And so that was my biggest lesson is I need to spend more time vetting people based on their true morals and characteristics. There's only so much of what you can do until you're actually in those situations. You pray you don't get in those situations. I do believe in trusting your intuition, spending time with people face to face, you can pretty quickly pick up on like, okay, this person's like, this is a real one, or this is somebody who's like, not somebody I would partner with, to put it as nicely as I can.
So true. Because in, what I do with the masterminds by doing hosting the private dinners, probably the main reason people just come no matter what day I say, like, hey, we're doing it this day, they're like, I'm there, because it's a pre-vetted selection. And I go through that process to make sure there are the right people, good people in those rooms, in those environments. And 100%, like you said, for me, it's integrity and values, I guess character too. It's kind of a little bit of the same, but those three before whatever, I don't care how successful you are.
Yeah.
So I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. Because also the success can happen overnight. I mean, obviously not truly overnight, but like the money and those kind of metrics, if that's what you're measuring your relationships off of, that can both happen very quickly and be lost very quickly. So instead, I would like to measure my relationships off of the elements and the credentials that can't change overnight or that I know won't change overnight.
So good. We're staying on this topic for a while because it's one of my favorite topics right here. Obviously, I want to talk about neighborhood. I want to talk about, Rock Realty, but let's stay here because I think in your bio, you also mentioned like strategic networking. I think that was something that, yeah, strategic networking. So talk to me. What is strategic networking?
Yes, there's actually a concept I teach real estate agents and blows their mind every time. I call that one strategic partnerships, but it really is. And funny enough, I just introduced you to a friend of mine who is incredible and has taught me so much about this. The first time him and I ever met, the bougiest story, we were like on a private jet to Cabo because we were going to this mastermind. But when you meet those people and like within the first exchange, you're like, okay, that's going to be one of my homies, like for life. Like there's something that's different there. He was telling me this story that has stuck out to me forever. And this is how I now believe strategic networking should act. And it's called buying favor. And there's a right and wrong way that you need to understand this, because buying favor does not mean that you're networking with people transactionally, but it does mean that when you are networking, it should be with intention. And that intention is not that, oh, I'm going to cash in on this favor in the future. It's buying favor in the sense that I know if I pour into enough people, that's going to come back to me one way or another. That may not be in the way that I imagine it, but it will absolutely feed my life and my people in the future, even if it's extremely indirectly. And so he has this whole concept about buying favor, and I relate that very closely to strategic networking. And it's just making sure that I'm not just going to networking events just to show up. If I'm going to go, I'm going to make sure I'm the best version of myself, that I want people to recognize me for who I am and what I can bring. And so, I speak at a lot of conferences, and usually at conferences, there's always the like mixer, like the VIP thing, all the other stuff. A lot of times I don't go to those, or I will go to them for a brief period of time. And it's only because I want to make sure that the entire time I'm exposing myself to people, that they're going to get the best version of myself. And if I was just up on stage for an hour giving my everything to a presentation and I'm exhausted and I've been wearing freaking high heels all day, I know that me going to a networking event is not going to be people experiencing the way I want them to remember me and know me. So I'd rather be absent from that than to show up not my best self, if that makes sense.
So good. I love it. Talk to me about, because we always hear like you provide other people value, right? What's some ways that you see yourself when you get introduced or you're, try to connect with someone? And it's not like you're connecting with someone, like you said, transactionally, but just like, I want to build this relationship. Who knows what could happen? What's some ways that you provide value for others?
Well, honestly, and Jesse Itzler has a way that he talks about this that's like so much more articulate than the way I'm about to say it, but I'll give the ghetto version probably. Is value doesn't always have to be teaching them something or introducing them to something. Sometimes, in fact, almost more often than not, the value actually comes in how you make somebody feel. So, you exchanging value or providing value could be just that you're at a networking event and you're not checking your phone at all. You are engaged in the conversation. You remember the last time you met them. You remember that you connected on social and you saw that their kid just got sick and they're now like, recovering from something. And it could be that you just are truly showing like that human characteristic. And I think now more than ever in our world of like evolving technology, that is probably one of the highest forms of value you can exchange with a lot of people. So that's one way that I try to is like my phone stays on do not disturb, which is another reason I'm not a practicing realtor anymore, is because I'm like, I love do not disturb.
Don't call Tessa for a showing.
Do not be calling me for a showing because I will not answer. But all jokes aside, I always like to really be present when I'm with people as much as I can. I think that's a big exchange of value. And then, extracting from conversation or from interactions ways that you can add value and introduce them to people in relevant ways. And so pretty much every time I interact with somebody, I try to really observe them. And sometimes it's not even the conversation. It's just observing like their mannerisms and how they interact. You can typically infer or make some positive assumptions of how you might be able to add value to them. And then I think the last piece of value, which goes very underrated, is vulnerability. Reaching out to somebody and being really vulnerable. Like a great example, I recently reached out to a friend of mine and I was super vulnerable in the fact that I was saying like, I'm somebody who has been a Christian my whole life. I have a calling right now to deepen my relationship with God and my faith. And that's a vulnerable ask because a lot of people wear their faith as like a token of, accomplishment. And it's hard to admit if you're not like the standard that you want to be at. It'd be the same thing as going to somebody and asking for coaching, asking for help. That's showing vulnerability. And I think that's really valuable and deepens a relationship to a whole new level with somebody and again, will pay off in the future.